Here. Thanks for checking in. What I have here today is Adobe Illustrator. I'd like to walk you through creating some artboards, setting some type, talking a little bit about text in Illustrator, showing you some resources, and working with text as you learn about it and learn how to control and manipulate it. So what I have right here is Illustrator, which I've just opened. One of the first windows that comes up in Illustrator is a Build Your Skills window. And the Build Your Skills window shows you things such as what's new in Illustrator. If you've been working with Illustrator, you can see what this version has that's new. If you also go to Practice Makes Perfect, go to Learn, you'll see that there'll be a bunch of brand new tutorials on the web. I'm asking that everybody do get to know Illustrator and add text to your designs at a minimum before you start venturing out on the digital part of this assignment. This will help you a lot. In fact, if you'd like to get through some more of these, it will open up other possibilities for you as you use Illustrator in other classes. So that's what these resources are here. What I'm going to do is close this window and open up a new window. So File, New, and this takes me to New Document. New Document is essentially at your disposal for creating new sheets of paper, pixel arrangements, whatever you can imagine relative to your working space. So think about it this way. The analogy that I have is that you can request any type of drawing pad that you want in any size. So this assignment is asking for us to create a 10 by 10 multiple artboard, which means multiple pieces of 10 by 10. And what I'm going to do here is set my width to 10 inches, my height to 10 inches. Since it's 10 by 10, it doesn't matter what the orientation is. We'll have 6 artboards. What that means is that there'll be 6 individual pieces of 10 by 10 here on our screen. And I'm going to have no bleed. That means that they're just going to be straight to the edge. By default, Illustrator makes this color mode CMYK, and pixels per inch will be 300. You can always change those, but we'll just use those as the default. So the reason I have this here is that I've set this up before so it remembers it. So every time that you've set a custom document, you can then go back without having to do those again. When I hit Create, it takes me to my new series of artboards. And what I want you to make sure that you have open here are a couple different things, and I'm pulling them out. One is, and you can find these under Window, you want to have make sure that you have character, okay? And typically that's under type. So you'll see type, character, make sure that's open. Command T is the shortcut, or and paragraph. So we have both of these here, okay? So make sure that you have those open. I also have properties open, but I'm going to close that to give us a little bit more information. And you can move your menus anywhere that you want. It's always hard when you have a smaller screen. Here I'm working with a laptop. If you have a larger screen, you'll have more real estate to move around. So first thing I'm going to do is Command R, which turns on rulers. We can see here through the rulers that these are 10 by 10 inches rather. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. If I zoom out, Command minus, we can see that this is essentially our table. And these are our 6 10 by 10 inch pieces of paper. And here we are kind of way above on the second level, on the second floor, looking down at our giant desk. Illustrator allows you to make a document that's this size. So a document could be actually 20 by 20 feet roughly. I'm going to zoom back in, Command plus, Or if you want, you can actually use the zoom tool, which is in your toolbar here, right? And you can zoom in. If you hold down the Option key, you can zoom out. You can also drag, so you can take your zoom tool, click and drag, and move this in and out, okay? So that's one way to do it. You can also move around with your mouse by going over here to the hand tool and moving the paper around. I'm using a laptop, so I'm using two fingers and moving this around. I'm also using two fingers here on the laptop, which then allows me to kind of pinch and zoom. So depending if you're on a desktop or a laptop, some of those features might be different. Some might be triggered by a mouse. Some might be triggered by your fingers on your laptop. Also, too, if you're using a PC, I'm sorry, all of the information I'm giving here today is based on the Mac. Ultimately, if you have Alt and Option on the PC, they substitute for Option and Command on the Mac. So let's talk a little bit about text. So text right here, here's the text tool. They call it the type tool. And if we click that and hold it, you'll see that there are some options here. You have just the regular type tool to set type. You have type on a path, which allows you to set type and then change the path so that you can move the type away from just a solid straight kind of lining up of. Vertical type is rarely used, but it's meant to put type like you would see on the spine of a book in that type of a fashion. So let's just talk about type and setting it. You know, this assignment here is asking you to work initially first with hand lettering verbs and then to translate those over into the digital side. So let's use the word collide. I just clicked there, and what that allowed me to do in this typeface Myriad Pro, which was the default, there's my type. It's hard to see because it's 12 point. So 72 points in an inch. So this would be 1/6 of an inch. So let's at least bring it up to an inch so that we can see it. This is Latin. This is kind of what we call Greek text, even though it's Latin. It's just a placeholder for text. So we can put in our verb here. I'm just going to use collide. You can use upper or lowercase. Once I set this, I can then go to my selection tool, which is the black selection tool, and I can click on this, which gives me a transform box, which then allows me to click and drag this word collide, and I can move it anywhere I want on the page, right? If I hold down the Option key while I have it selected and click and drag, I can make a copy of this. So interestingly enough, I could take this, which is selected, right? So I basically duplicated collide. And what I have here is the verb collide in Myriad Pro, regular typeface. Now the text is at 186 points, right? Which is roughly 2.5 inches. 72 points is an inch. And now I have the ability to really transform this. I could move this around by grabbing one of the sides of the transform tool. If I hold down the Shift key, it allows me to rotate this in increments of degrees. So what I've done there is basically flip it around, and now I'm moving it together here, right? So what I kind of like here is this idea of colliding the spaces that are vertical in the verb, right? So that there is a quick interpretation of the assignment as we have organized it digitally. And all we did there specifically was set the type, We can choose the font. Let's choose something different. Let's choose something that's a little bit let's choose this here. Something that's a little more classic. Let's use Palatino. And let's use Collide. And let's enlarge it a little bit so that we can see it. When you select your text, you can change the color simply by selecting it and going down here to your well. What your well is your color picker. What this is saying is that your text is filled with black and it's outlined with nothing. If I were to flip that, you'll see now that my verb has a fill of nothing, but an outline of black. A lot of this is described in the tutorial. I'm just going to mention it here briefly because you will determine the look of your typeface. One thing here that I'd like to show you is the idea of converting text. And right now, this word collide is connected to the font Palatino. So when we asked for Palatino, our operating system served a font file to Illustrator, which read the information regarding creating this actual style. We can take this and we can select the typeface and then create outlines from that. So what I'd like to do here is, if you go to type, after you've selected any type that's in font form, you can convert it to outlines by simply just selecting create outlines. What this does is it allows you now to work with individual pieces and individual letter forms and manipulate them. For instance, if we take our selection tool, now we can select a individual part of this type. And you can see here as I'm moving through it, what we have here is an anchor, a path, an anchor. So when this typeface was drawn and digitized, somebody did this work. They set these anchors and paths and connected them to this very old typeface, which goes back to the 15th or 16th century, which is based on hot metal type. You can see here that the counter of the O has kind of a negative tilt. You can see the serifs here of the L and how broad they are. You can see how the counter of the D is more vertical and straight. And you can see some of the nuances of the letter form when you look at the type in outline mode. If I were to go to my direct selection tool, which is the white selection tool, I can select on certain parts of these. And then what this does is it shows all of the individual anchor points. So for instance, I could take this anchor and this anchor, holding down the shift key here, and I can drag these anchors. And I can change a lot about the way that this typeface looks like, right? So what I've just done there was take the ending or terminus of that end of that C and I kind of made it round, right? I made it droop a little bit more. If I do Command Z, it will take me back, right? So that's how it looks. And then what I did was I rounded it. You can do other things with it too. Here I am pulling certain parts of this, right? I mean, you can have a lot of fun with changing a letter form just by moving around anchor points inside the letter. And now this no longer even looks like a C. It looks like some nautical version of it, or some type of cartoon version of it. Remember, Command Z takes you back in time. You can also, I'll zoom out here. And zoom back in. You can also take individual letters and move them where you want. What I did there was I just selected all of the points together, right? See what I did there? Selected all of these points together. Now I have the whole entire C. I could group that, object group, so it stays together. So if I just click it, I can move it. Select it all. And then I can do something with it, right? I can collide it. So here I am colliding it, bringing it together. I can do that with any of these letter forms, right? So the idea here would be is to get all of these together that are in the first L. If I use my arrow key, I can move that over just by pressing the arrow key. So now I have this letter kind of colliding, right? Colliding itself, colliding into itself, but with just specific glyphs, right? So I'm going to take this E, right? I'm going to select this E, watch, select it, and then collide it with that form. So Illustrator is very powerful in this way because you don't have to, you're not drawing anything, so to speak. You're just selecting points. So now I'm going to move this out a little further. And you can see there, I missed selecting one part, so it's like pulling it from. Sometimes these are cool when this happens because it shows a new form. It's almost like there's a bird's wing in there. Okay, so one thing that's really powerful is creating outlines of your text and selecting portions of that text and then manipulating it. Another thing is taking the actual text itself and moving it around, right? Thanks for listening, and tune in to the next one where we'll probably talk about kerning and spacing and other things that we can do with text that is set in paragraph form as we start to take a look at hierarchy.
Illustrator, specifically in just opening up Illustrator and creating a new file, and then simply close it out and feed. Be more than happy to get with you. Okay, have a great night, and I'll talk to you soon.